Welcome to another episode of Mission Compliance, Unleashing Growth Potential for Defense Contractors. In today's episode, we continue down the road of understanding CMMC, its regulations, and controls. Up next is AU L2-3.3.7. Hang on to your hats for this one. Provide a system capability that compares and synchronizes internal system clocks with an authoritative source to generate timestamps for audit records. That's right, you heard me right the first time. We'll break down what this control means, why it matters, and how it impacts your organization's cybersecurity posture. We'll also provide practical strategies and insights for achieving compliance and securing your systems effectively. So whether you're a defense contractor aiming to win more contracts or simply someone interested in bolstering your cybersecurity knowledge, you're in the right place. Your mission, should you choose to accept it. We're joined once again today by Mike Frieder, President of On-Call Compliance Solutions and a CMMC Professional Assessor. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Hey, always a pleasure, Roman. Good to be here.
So, Mike, obviously this control is a bit of a mouthful, as they heard in the intro. I struggled a bit to do it. It is what it is. We move on. But we're talking about system capability, synchronization, and timestamps. This control seems, like I said, seems like a long-winded way to say something very simple, but maybe you can help clarify this for our audience. So why is this control important?
It's interesting. I think there's nothing simple about this control, and I think it probably requires that many words to understand why it's important. So don't feel bad. I mean, it's believe me, there's a lot of mumbo jumbo in all of these controls, but typically we find out that mumbo jumbo, well, maybe it's not so jumbo, right? Maybe it's not so mumbo. Maybe it actually means something. But I think this is a control that's really precisely the case with. So. Let's kind of break it down like we always do, right? So provide a system capability that compares and synchronizes internal system clocks, right? So again, when you look down your Windows or Macintosh or Linux machine, you've got a clock uh, with an authoritative source, which means that it's not getting that time from itself. It's not self-generated time. Um, to generate timestamps for audit records. And so we find out the why. Why is that important? Well, because we've heard in the previous two controls just how important a security information and event management system is. Now we're hearing, hey, you know what else is important is actually having audit logs with accurate timestamps. And so what this is really all about is two things. One, making sure that someone doesn't play with the clock on our computers. Why? We'll go into that in just a minute. Second thing is that they're keying in the idea that the reason is because they want those audit records to be accurate. There's a lot of different attacks that can happen because people monkey around with the time. I'll go into those in just a minute. But the real point is that if you're just running a standalone local computer, it is not okay for you to not have an authoritative time source. That's really interesting to me, right? Obviously, if you have a domain joined computer, as an example, it's probably going to look to the domain controller or some other authoritative time source, maybe the firewall. Lots of places you could specify a time server and group policy. But the point is that it should be getting that time source from somewhere else, not itself, in case somebody's tampered with it. Um, why is this? So, a couple of different reasons. Number one is replay attacks. Okay. So if a system clock is not synchronized, an attacker could capture legitimate transactions or communications and replay them at a later time, potentially causing unauthorized actions or data breaches. So yes, the time is actually something that can be manipulated to allow someone to potentially get an authentication token copied. Very interesting stuff. Not something that a lot of people really think of. It's a pretty sophisticated attack, but let's be honest, these are the most sophisticated attackers that are going after our US defense contractors, so it's important. Next is tampering with logs, right? Accurate timestamps are crucial for audit trails. Unsynchronized clocks can lead to discrepancies in log files, making it difficult to detect or investigate security incidents. Attackers may exploit this by manipulating the time to hide their activities. So in other words, if you make a change to a system and then reverse the clock, you can hide the fact that it happened at a certain time. and potentially manipulate your reporting systems to not alert because of something happening perhaps during the day instead of at 3 o'clock in the morning when it's some other country's daytime and they're actually performing the attack. So again, it can basically lead to you not wanting to investigate or not needing to investigate something because it didn't happen at an unusual time, even when it actually did. Another one is data integrity. Accurate timestamps ensure that data can be validated and verified. If timestamps are incorrect, it may lead to issues with data integrity, making it challenging to establish a clear chain of custody, or really just even a clear chain of events of what happened. And so, again, we look back at date and timestamps anytime there's been an attack so that we can try to figure out how did it happen, why did it happen, who did it, and can we track them down and find the bad guy and get them to stop? Or do we know what it is we need to do to stop an attack in the future? Do we know what happened? Time is a critical element of investigation. Obviously, for incident response in the event of a security incident, having synchronized clocks is essential for effective forensic analysis. It allows security teams to accurately correlate events across different systems, improving response times and effectiveness. So many reasons why time is critical. The incident response is a big one. And then accountability. Proper time synchronization helps ensure accountability within systems. Without accurate timestamps, attributing to actions to specific users or systems becomes difficult, potentially allowing malicious actors to evade detection. So again, if you can't tell when something happened, it may not seem unusual, whereas it might seem unusual if it happened at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, giving an indication of an attack. So again, by implementing a system capability for clock synchronization, organizations can bolster their security posture, enhance their ability to audit and investigate incidents, and maintain the integrity of their systems. So it's interesting. You read the control, you go, that's not that important. And then you realize, wow, this actually can affect a lot of different kinds of attacks, particularly with attackers trying to cover their tracks.
Absolutely. So with that being said, let's get right to it. What are the key assessment points that an assessor will be looking for on this particular control?
Yeah, so this particular control has three assessment points. First is determining if internal system clocks are used to generate timestamps for audit records. So again, can we determine whether that's the case? So, a sample answer might be system clocks are set via group policy to utilize the domain controller as the authoritative time source. Another one is you could also set them to use time.nist.gov as an authoritative time source. That's a public time server, or any other potential authoritative time source. Lots of ways to answer this question. Next is determine if an authoritative source with which to compare and synchronize internal system clocks is specified. The answer is yes, time.nist.gov in the case of this example answer. Obviously, if we're having a NIST compliant standard, why not use a NIST time server? Determine if internal system clocks used to generate timestamps or audit record are compared to and synchronized with the specified authoritative time source. And again, we look to our group policy to give a demonstration of that. And again, that's pretty well defined, I think.
Okay, so on that note, what are the potential difficulties of enacting this one in an organization?
I got to tell you, a lot of other controls have real difficulties. Cultural shift, this, that, the other thing. This is an easy one. This is really easy. I think what we tend to find is that people really overlook the importance of making sure there is an authoritative time source. Obviously, the people over at NIST think the same thing because otherwise they wouldn't have put this control in place. So I think the biggest thing is just awareness. I think nobody is aware to do this unless you have either gone through a cyber incident or unless you are a cybersecurity professional who is familiar with what needs to be done to properly synchronize clocks against third-party time sources. So, in that regard, I think basically it's just a matter of awareness. I mean, I think that's the biggest challenge. You don't know what you don't know, and if you've never dealt with something like this before, you would never know to change the time servers away from local or set it to your domain controller and set your domain controller to an outside authoritative time source. It's not intuitive. It doesn't make any sense. Why would you bother? But in fact, there is a good reason to bother. There's actually a lot of good reasons to bother. So I think that's probably the number one thing. Fortunately, it doesn't really affect anything as far as day-to-day operations, generally speaking. It just simply sets the authoritative time source the next time they log in. And it's a pretty easy one to implement, actually.
All right. Well, you know the drill here. If you've been with us for 70 whatever episodes this is, 72. We're getting close to that elusive 75. Not that anyone's ever said 75 is elusive, but it's the next benchmark on the road to 100. Uh,
Hey, I'm all about having as many celebrations as I can, right?
Hey, but if you've been with us this long, you know the drill. We ask three questions and then we try to finish it off with a silly question, kind of keep things light. Sometimes they're not relevant at all, but Mike is very good at steering it back in the right direction. I feel like this one may be a little more relevant. But this control we're talking about system clocks and synchronizing and timestamps and this kind of thing. And when I think about that kind of thing. We're big movie fans here at the Mission Compliance Podcast. When I think of that kind of thing, I always think about those movies that, like in the CIA offices or the spy organization offices, they have the wall of clocks that are all set to different times, and you have the label of what city it's in around the world, and sometimes you get the joke versions where like they have three clocks and they're all set at the same time zone. But in that case, what if your system just had a digital wall of clocks? Would that be able to help with the timestamps? A digital version of the wall of clocks that we see on TV.
Well, it depends. It depends on if you would look to the wall as your reference for authority, I suppose. No, that's a good question. I think that the wall of clocks concept is a very interesting one. I travel quite a bit and try to keep a two time zone watch with my home base time being my authority on what it is that I'm doing, aside from what I do with the client on that trip. And I think that clocks are very, very important. But with that being said, computers can't read the world around them, at least not yet. They are not quite self-aware, John Connor. But they are getting there. So at least for right now, I think the wall of clocks will remain elusive to the computer and its understanding in case it is trying to be tampered with. But in the future, perhaps they can use the webcams to scan the room around them and get them to be more accurate. Again, being able to really take in the environment around them. It is a scary world that we live in, and it is only a matter of time. So for now, no, I think those clocks are probably just going to look like pretty looking wall art. But in the future, perhaps computers will become self-aware and hopefully they won't try to kill us, but they probably will. And they might be able to actually look at clocks in the room to say, hey, why doesn't that match my time?
You call me John Connor, and I did mention that we are big movie fans here, and I have to take this moment to say that I believe Terminator 2 may just be the greatest sequel of all time. There
And
are a lot
I
of
must
great.
take I must take this moment to say I 110% agree with you. No questions asked.
I mean, there are a lot of sequels that some would say are better than the originals. The Dark Knight, Bad Boys 2, just to name a few, but Terminator 2 might be the greatest sequel of all time. Anyway,
Hey,
that wraps up.
my job is to remind people sometimes they are wrong, and so I think anybody that says there is a better sequel, probably not.
There really isn't. It's so great. But but on that note, that wraps up another great episode of Mission Compliance. We hope our discussion today has provided you with valuable insights, practical strategies, and inspiration to navigate the ever-evolving world of defense. We'd like to thank Mike for joining us and telling us all about timestamps, synchronization, and agreeing with me that Terminator 2 is the greatest sequel of all time. Thanks, Mike.
Hey, I'll be back.
Oh boy. But the conversation doesn't end here. We encourage you to continue exploring these topics and connect with fellow listeners and ask questions. Share your thoughts and engage with fellow listeners using the hashtag Mission Compliance Podcast. I just completely bungled that entire thing. Excuse me. It's not like it's been
Hey, what
72 episodes or anything.
bungle away, that's what I say.
If they haven't already, what should they do, Mike?
Well, they should definitely like this podcast. They should subscribe to it because we're immensely entertaining in our own self-derivation. And no, I'm just kidding. It's yeah, but like it, subscribe it, share it with your friends, hand it off to another defense contractor who is struggling to figure out all of this DFARS, NIST, and CMMC stuff, and they'll like you a lot better.
All the things. We do have a referral program, but it is not relative to this podcast. So if you want to get in on that, schedule a meeting with us. Anyway, join join us next time as we delve further into the dynamic world of defense, security, and industry innovation. Until then, take care, stay informed, and make compliance your mission. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.